Captain Laura Bennett stood at the bridge of the United Earth Navy vessel, Pathfinder, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. The vast emptiness of space stretched before her, but she wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in human history, they were about to meet intelligent life from beyond Earth. "How's your stomach holding up, Captain?" Dr. Alan Wright asked as he joined her at the view screen. The xenobiologist had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. "Better than expected," Laura answered with a slight smile. "I just keep reminding myself that this is what we've trained for." The year was 2157, and humanity had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. The discovery had propelled Earth into a new age, and the Pathfinder's mission was to establish first contact with the Galactic Consortium, a coalition of 27 sentient species that had been watching Earth for decades. Lieutenant Gregg, Porter's voice broke through Laura's thoughts. "Captain, the alien vessel is sending docking instructions. Their language translation systems seem compatible with ours." "Well done, Lieutenant. Proceed with docking procedures. Dr. Wright, assemble the first contact team." 6 hours later, Laura led a small delegation through the airlock and into the consortium vessel. The corridor before them was taller and wider than human standards, with strange symbols etched into metallic walls that seemed to shift color under different angles of light. Their welcoming committee waited at the end of the hallway. Commander Zach Thule stood nearly 7 feet tall, his reptilian body covered in iridescent scales. Behind him were representatives from 3 other species, one that resembled a walking plant, another with 4 arms and blue skin, and a third that seemed to float several inches above the ground. "Captain Bennett of Earth," Zach Thule spoke, his voice translated through a small device at his throat. "The Galactic Consortium welcomes humans to the greater community of spacefaring civilizations." Laura stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Commander Zach Thule, on behalf of Earth and all humanity, we are honored to meet you and look forward to peaceful relations." The initial meeting went better than anyone had expected. The aliens were curious about Earth and seemed impressed by how quickly humans had developed technology. Laura felt a surge of hope as they were led to a large meeting chamber where more representatives waited. That hope began to fade during the diplomatic dinner that evening. "You evolved on a death world," stated Kel Nara, the plant-like diplomat, as she examined data on human biology. "Your atmospheric oxygen levels alone would be toxic to half our member species." Dr. Wright leaned forward eagerly. "That's fascinating. Perhaps we could exchange biological data. I'd love to understand how your species developed." "What interests us," interrupted Zach Thule, "is how your species survived at all. Your planet has extreme temperature variations, widespread predators, natural disasters, and pathogens that constantly mutate. Yet instead of developing one specialized adaptation, humans became generalists." Laura noticed the odd tone in the commander's voice. "Being adaptable has served us well," she said carefully. "Indeed, your adaptability is concerning." The mood in the room shifted. Laura felt the aliens watching her team with new intensity. "Perhaps we should discuss technology exchange," she suggested, trying to steer the conversation back to diplomacy. An hour into these discussions, Laura accidentally knocked over her water glass, the sharp edge catching her palm as she tried to grab it. Blood welled up from a small cut. The reaction was immediate. The aliens recoiled, some making high-pitched sounds their translators didn't convert. Zach Thule's scales flattened against his body, a sign Dr. Wright would later identify as extreme distress. "Captain, you are injured," the commander exclaimed. Laura looked at her hand in confusion. "It's just a small cut." She pulled a napkin from the table and wrapped it around her palm. "I'm fine. Please, let's continue." The silence was deafening. The 4-armed diplomat leaned toward Zach Thule and whispered something that made the commander's eyes widen. "You continue to function while leaking bodily fluids," he said slowly, "without medical intervention." Laura looked to Dr. Wright, who seemed equally confused. "It's really nothing serious," she assured them. "How much blood can a human lose before death?" asked Kelnara directly. Dr. Wright blinked at the abrupt question. An average adult can lose about 30–40% of their blood volume before reaching critical condition. The aliens exchanged glances that Laura couldn't interpret. And you evolved this resilience naturally? Not through genetic engineering? Zach Thule asked. Of course. Our medical science only recently developed gene therapy. The diplomatic meeting ended shortly after, with the aliens citing a need to confer among themselves. The human delegation returned to their ship confused about what had gone wrong. The next morning, Zach Thule requested a private meeting with Laura and Dr. Wright. His demeanor was formal and distant. Captain Bennett, the consortium has reviewed our findings about humanity. We have concerns. What kind of concerns? Laura asked. Your species displays traits commonly found in apex predators. You have forward-facing eyes for targeting prey. You can consume almost any organic matter without immediate harm. Your endurance exceeds that of any consortium species. You can survive injuries that would kill most sentient beings. Dr. Wright frowned. These are just evolutionary adaptations to Earth's conditions. Indeed, Zach Thule continued, which is precisely what concerns us. The conditions that created humans would destroy most intelligent life. You are, by necessity, the galaxy's most durable sentient species. And that's a problem? Laura asked. History shows that predator species who achieve space travel often become expansionist. Laura felt her diplomacy training kick in. Commander, humans have had many wars in our past, but we've moved beyond violence as a first response. Our mission here is peaceful, perhaps, but your capacity for violence remains. Zach Thule handed her a tablet. The consortium has decided to classify Earth as a restricted world pending further study. We will establish an observation post in your solar system, but wider contact must wait until we better understand your species. Laura stared at the tablet in disbelief. You're quarantining us? Based on our biology? Based on what your biology represents. Most species achieve intelligence through cooperation. Humans achieved it while maintaining predator instincts. You are an evolutionary anomaly. 3 days later, the Pathfinder returned to Earth with troubling news. Humanity had made first contact, only to be labeled too dangerous for the galactic community. On the journey home, Dr. Wright compiled his notes on the alien species they'd encountered. Each had evolved on worlds with few predators, stable climates, and limited natural disasters. Their bodies were specialized, efficient, but fragile. They're afraid of us because we're tough, he told Laura one evening. Things that are normal. To us, healing from injuries, adapting to different environments, even our omnivorous diet. These things make us uniquely threatening in their eyes. Laura stared out at the stars. So humanity's first lesson about the galaxy is that we're the monsters. Not monsters, Dr. Wright corrected. Just the scariest warriors they've ever seen. And we haven't even shown them what humans are truly capable of yet. Neither of them could have predicted how valuable those scary warrior traits would soon become. 1 year had passed since the first contact between humanity and the Galactic Consortium. Earth's governments had spent months arguing about how to proceed after being labeled a dangerous warrior species. Some wanted to build warships to protect Earth. Others pushed for more diplomatic attempts. In the end, they agreed to allow a consortium research team to visit Earth to study humans further. Dr. Susan Parker stood at the landing pad, watching the alien ship descend through the clouds. As a xenoanthropologist, she had been chosen to guide the aliens in their research. Next to her stood Kevin Diaz, a former military medic who now served as the security liaison for the alien visitors. You nervous? Kevin asked, squinting up at the approaching vessel. A little, Susan admitted. I keep wondering what they'll think of us once they really get to know us. The alien ship was smaller than the massive cruiser that had greeted the Pathfinder a year ago. It landed with barely a sound, its sleek surface reflecting the morning sunlight. The first to emerge was Chief Scientist Elovex, an insectoid alien with large compound eyes and 4 delicate arms. Behind him came 3 assistants of different species, and finally, a tall, elegant being with shimmering skin, who introduced herself as council member Nix Tara, a political observer from the consortium. "Welcome to Earth," Susan said with a slight bow. "I'm Dr. Susan Parker, and this is Kevin Diaz. We'll be your guides during your stay." Elovex's mandibles clicked as the translation device at his throat converted the sounds to English. "We appreciate your hospitality, Dr. Parker. The consortium is eager to understand human biology and culture more thoroughly, and to determine if we're a threat?" Kevin asked directly. Nix's Tara stepped forward, her movements fluid like water. "To determine your proper place in the galactic community. Different species have different roles based on their evolved traits. The first week of the aliens' visit was spent in laboratories and medical facilities. The researchers collected data on human physiology, running tests that seemed strange to Susan and Kevin. They measured pain tolerance, healing rates, endurance, and reaction times. "I don't understand," Susan said one day as she watched Elovex review test results with growing agitation. "These are basic human capabilities. Why did they surprise you so much?" Kevin had his own theory. "I think we're built tougher than they are. Notice how carefully they move, how they flinch at loud noises." His observation proved correct when the research team requested a demonstration of human physical capabilities. They gathered at a local university track where Kevin had arranged for athletes to showcase various human sports. As they watched a group of runners complete a 5-mile race, Nix's Tara turned to Susan with an expression of disbelief. "They run this distance? For enjoyment?" "Some people do, yes," Susan replied. "Others run marathons, which are about 26 miles. The aliens exchanged looks of horror. "Most consortium species can only sprint briefly in life-threatening situations," Elovex explained. "Sustained running would cause organ failure in many of our peoples." Later that week, the research team requested access to human historical records. Susan took them to the National History Museum, not realizing how the exhibits would affect their visitors. As they walked through displays showing human warfare through the ages, from ancient spears to modern weapons, Nixitara grew increasingly distressed. "Your entire history is marked by conflict," she said quietly. "Not just conflict," Susan corrected. "We also have art, music, literature, scientific achievements. War is only part of our story, but it drove much of your innovation," Elovex noted, studying a display about medical advances that came from treating battlefield injuries. "You turned violence into progress." The most revealing moment came during a demonstration of human dietary habits. When Kevin casually mentioned that humans could eat many things that might be poisonous in small doses, the research team demanded testing. In a controlled laboratory setting, Kevin demonstrated how humans could safely consume capsaicin, caffeine, and small amounts of alcohol, all substances that would be toxic to many alien species. "Your bodies evolved to neutralize poisons," Elovex said with a mixture of fear and admiration. "Because your world is filled with plants and animals that develop toxins to avoid being eaten. And yet you eat them anyway," added Nix's Tara. The final week of the consortium visit focused on human society and psychology. The aliens conducted interviews with people from different cultures and backgrounds, trying to understand what drove humanity. During one session, a researcher asked Susan about human concepts of bravery. "Why do humans value rushing into danger? In most species, self-preservation is the highest instinct." Susan thought carefully before answering. "Humans admire those who put others before themselves. We believe there are things worth fighting, for even dying for." "Like what?" the researcher pressed. "Freedom, family, our way of life, the right to choose our own path." That evening, Susan found Kevin talking with Nixitara on the roof of their hotel, looking up at the stars. "Your people have asked permission to demonstrate your military capabilities tomorrow," Nixitara said as Susan joined them. "The consortium is concerned about this request." "It's not meant as a threat," Kevin explained. "We just want you to understand us completely. Our capacity for violence exists to protect what we care about." The military demonstration the next day was carefully planned to be informative without being threatening. Special Forces teams showed their training, engineers displayed defensive technologies, and military leaders explained human concepts of deterrence and protection. Throughout it all, the alien observers remained silent, their recording devices capturing everything. On their final day on Earth, Elovex presented Susan and Kevin with his team's preliminary findings. "We have classified humans as apex predators of concerning intelligence," he announced. "Your species evolved under conditions that forced you to become adaptable, resilient, and capable of both great violence and great innovation." "Is that good or bad?" Kevin asked. "It is unique," Nixtera said carefully. "Most sentient species evolved on gentle homeworlds with few predators or environmental challenges. Their bodies are specialized for efficiency, not survival against odds." "And humans?" Susan asked. "Humans are what happens when intelligence develops in a species that never stopped having to fight to survive," Elovex said. "You are physiologically designed for endurance, recovery, and adaptation. You eat things that would kill other species. You continue functioning despite injuries, temperature extremes, and psychological stress that would incapacitate most sentient beings." As the alien ship prepared to depart, Nixtara took Susan aside for one final conversation. "My report to the consortium will acknowledge that humans do not seem aggressive without cause, but I cannot change the fact that your species represents something most of the galaxy has never encountered. A sentient predator that not only survived its evolutionary challenges but mastered them." Susan watched the ship lift off, carrying the alien research team and their report back to the consortium. She wondered what this would mean for humanity's future among the stars. "They think we're dangerous," Kevin said, standing beside her. "No," Susan corrected. "They think we're survivors. And in a galaxy of specialists, that makes us very special indeed. Neither of them could have guessed how soon the galaxy would need exactly what humanity had to offer." 3 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Consortium. Earth had been kept at arm's length, allowed limited trade but denied full membership in the galactic community. Humans were still viewed as too unpredictable, too dangerous to be fully trusted. Admiral Olivia Reyes stood on the bridge of the UN Defender, Earth's first true interstellar warship. At 45 years old, she had spent her entire career in the United Earth Navy, never imagining she would one day command a vessel capable of traveling between stars. "Status report," she called to her bridge crew. "All systems normal, Admiral," responded Lieutenant Maria Vasquez from the navigation station. "We're maintaining position at the edge of the Sol system as ordered." Olivia nodded, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. The Defender and its sister ships had been built after Earth learned about potential threats in the galaxy. Though the consortium hadn't shared much information, they had warned that not all species in space were peaceful. John Martinez, the ship's tactical specialist, approached her with a datapad. "Admiral, we've been monitoring consortium communications. Something's happening out there." Before she could respond, the communications officer called out, "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from consortium headquarters." On screen, Olivia ordered, straightening her uniform. The face that appeared was familiar from diplomatic briefings. Ambassador Threlmach, a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and large, thoughtful eyes. His species, the Lani, were known for their diplomatic skills. "Admiral Reyes," Threlmach began, his voice translated by the ship's computer. "The consortium requests an urgent meeting with Earth representatives." "Regarding what, Ambassador?" Threlmach hesitated. "We face a threat that the consortium is struggling to contain. We believe humans may have insights that could help." 2. Days later, Olivia found herself in a conference room aboard a massive consortium vessel. John Martinez sat beside her, along with representatives from Earth's government. Across the table sat Threlmach and Grand Admiral Voxashan, the military leader of the consortium forces. Voxashan was from a species Olivia hadn't encountered before. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with gray skin that seemed almost metallic, and 4 arms that ended in 3-fingered hands. His eyes were deep black pools that reflected light like polished obsidian. "We thank you for coming," Voxashan began. "The consortium faces an enemy we call the Void Reavers, They are not a sentient species as we understand the concept. They are more like a hive mind operating with a single purpose: consumption. Images appeared on the wall screen showing dark insect-like creatures swarming over planets and ships. We first encountered them 6 months ago at our outer colonies, Threlmach continued. They have destroyed 17 outposts and 3 major settlements. Our conventional tactics have been ineffective. John leaned forward, studying the images. What makes these Void Reavers so hard to fight? Voxashan's upper hands made a gesture of frustration. They adapt quickly. They learn from each encounter. And they do not fear death as individuals because they are not individuals. Each one is merely a cell in a larger organism. And why come to us? Olivia asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Threlmach and Voxashan exchanged glances. The consortium species evolved for cooperation, Threlmach explained carefully. Our worlds had few predators. Our societies developed through mutual support and specialization. We lack the warrior instinct. You mean you don't know how to fight a war? John said bluntly. We know how to defend. We know how to maintain peace between rational beings, Voxashan countered. But the Void Reavers are not rational. They cannot be reasoned with. They do not seek territory or resources in ways we understand. They simply consume. Olivia understood now. And you think humans, with our predator instincts and history of warfare, might have better ideas? Precisely, Threlmach admitted. We need human tactical expertise. Over the next several hours, John and Olivia reviewed the data on Void Reaver encounters. The consortium forces had always approached battle with direct, straightforward tactics. They would announce their presence, form orderly battle lines, and engage the enemy with overwhelming force. It was how they had maintained peace for thousands of years among their member species, but the Void Reavers didn't play by those rules. Your approach is all wrong, John finally said, looking up from the battle records. You're fighting as if the Reavers share your sense of honor. They don't. They're predators, just like Earth's apex predators. And to fight a predator, sometimes you need to think like one. Voxashan's eyes narrowed. What do you suggest? Deception, ambush, hit-and-run tactics, psychological warfare. John began sketching plans on a data pad. You need to stop announcing your presence. Stop giving them time to adapt. Strike hard where they don't expect you, then disappear before they can counter. The consortium officers looked disturbed. Olivia knew why. From her briefings on alien psychology, she understood that many consortium species had evolved without the concept of deception. They didn't hide their intentions or lie. The idea of an ambush was alien to them, perhaps even morally repugnant. What John suggests may seem uncomfortable, she said carefully. But these are proven tactics against enemies that have superior numbers or adaptability. You speak of fighting without honor, one of the junior officers said. John shook his head. I speak of fighting to win. There's no honor in dying when you could have lived to protect your people. After much debate, a joint human consortium battle plan was developed. The first test would come at a small outpost that intelligence suggested would be the next Void Reaver target. 3 days later, Admiral Reyes stood on the bridge of the Defender, now part of a mixed fleet hidden behind a large moon. They had shut down all non-essential systems to minimize detection. The Reavers are approaching, reported a consortium officer on the shared comm channel. They follow the expected route. Remember the plan, Olivia said to both her crew and the consortium ships. No engagement until they're fully committed to the bait. The bait was a seemingly vulnerable supply ship broadcasting a distress signal. As predicted, the Void Reavers changed course to attack it. They've taken the bait, John reported. All ships in swarm formation around the target. Now, Olivia commanded. The human and consortium ships powered up simultaneously, emerging from hiding and striking the Reaver swarm from multiple directions. The attack was swift, brutal, and completely unexpected. For the first time, the Void Reavers suffered significant losses before they could adapt. When it was over, the consortium officers stared at their tactical displays in shock. The victory had been overwhelming. "Your tactics worked," Voxashan admitted to Olivia afterward. "But they feel wrong to us, deceptive, predatory." "Sometimes," Olivia replied gently, "you need a predator to fight a predator. That's why the galaxy needs humans." As the joint fleet returned to Consortium space, news of the victory spread. Suddenly, the scary warrior species from Earth didn't seem so frightening anymore, at least, not to their allies. 1 year into the war against the Void Reavers, humanity had gone from being feared outsiders to valued allies. Earth ships now patrolled alongside Consortium vessels, and human tactical advisors were stationed on major worlds throughout Consortium space. The initial victory that Admiral Reyes and John Martinez had helped secure was followed by others, though the Void Reavers remained a serious threat. Major Patricia Winters wiped sweat from her forehead as she watched her newest trainees attempt the obstacle course. As leader of a specialized human training unit, she had spent months teaching alien soldiers how to fight like humans. It wasn't easy. Many Consortium species lacked the physical capabilities that humans took for granted, and almost all of them struggled with the psychological aspects of combat. "They're getting better," said Fleet Commander Zix Tull, the tall, four-armed alien, who had been assigned as her liaison. Though initially skeptical of human methods, he had gradually come to respect Patricia's approach. "Slowly," Patricia agreed, "but they still hesitate when making split-second decisions." The training facility had been built on Nexus Station, a massive space platform that served as the forward base against the Void Reavers. Nearby, engineers from Earth worked alongside Consortium scientists, developing new weapons and defenses. Daniel Garcia, a brilliant engineer from Brazil, led one such team. At 32, he had already gained fame for adapting human military technology to work with alien physiology. "The problem isn't just physical," Daniel explained to Dr. Linda Phillips as they observed testing of a new targeting system. "Most Consortium species process visual information differently than humans. Their reaction times are excellent, but they don't have our instinctive threat assessment." Linda nodded, a neuropsychologist specializing in stress responses. She had been studying the fundamental differences between human and alien minds. "It's the fight-or-flight response," she said. "Humans developed it as prey animals, then refined it as we became predators. When threatened, our bodies flood with chemicals that enhance performance. Most Consortium species either freeze or retreat when threatened. They never evolved that middle option, to stand and fight against superior predators." Daniel turned back to his work. "That's why these targeting systems need to compensate. They need to identify threats before the alien operators would naturally notice them." Throughout the station, humans and aliens worked together, each bringing their unique evolutionary gifts to the partnership. The humans brought their combat instincts and adaptability. The aliens contributed their specialized skills and advanced technology. Not all collaborations went smoothly. Cultural misunderstandings were common, and some aliens still found humans disturbing. The casual way that humans discussed violence or accepted pain often shocked their Consortium colleagues. Patricia experienced this firsthand during a training exercise gone wrong. One of her alien trainees, a tall bird-like being named Krizek, had accidentally discharged a weapon during drills. The energy pulse had struck Patricia's arm, causing a painful burn. The other aliens had frozen in horror, expecting her to collapse, or at least stop the exercise. Instead, Patricia had calmly applied a med patch and continued training. "Major Winters," Zixtal said afterward, "your response today troubled many of the trainees." Patricia looked confused. "What response?" "I barely reacted." "Precisely. You were injured, yet you continued as if nothing had happened. To many species, this seems unnatural, almost machine-like." Patricia considered this. "Where I come from, we have a saying, pain is just weakness leaving the body. It's not that I don't feel pain. I simply choose not to let it control me." Zixtal's four hands made a gesture that Patricia had learned meant deep consideration. "This is what fascinates and frightens us about humans. You have control over biological imperatives that most species cannot override. The conversation gave Patricia an idea. The next day, she invited Dr. Phillips to speak to her trainees about human stress responses. Perhaps understanding how humans functioned would help the aliens develop their own combat resilience. Linda's presentation became unexpectedly popular. Soon she was addressing groups throughout the station, explaining the unique aspects of human psychology that made them effective warriors. Humans evolved under constant threat, she explained to a large audience of mixed species. Our stress response system is designed to function under pressure. Where many species become paralyzed by fear, humans often become hyper-focused. We call it being in the zone, or combat clarity. An insectoid being raised an appendage to ask a question. Can non-humans learn this response? To some degree, yes, Linda answered. Through training and mental conditioning, you can develop similar patterns. This is what Major Winter's program aims to achieve. While this education continued, the war against the Void Reavers intensified. Intelligence reports indicated a major Reaver force heading toward a consortium colony world called Ilara Prime. Daniel's team worked around the clock to prepare defenses, while Patricia trained special strike teams for the coming battle. The plan incorporated human tactical thinking with consortium technology, a blend that had proven effective in previous engagements. 3 days before the expected attack, Patricia led a final briefing for the mixed human-alien defense force. Remember, you're training, she told them. The Reavers will try to overwhelm us with numbers. They'll expect us to form a traditional defense perimeter. Instead, we'll use multiple small teams to disrupt their swarm patterns. One of her alien trainees, a stocky reptilian named Drav, raised a hand. What if communications are disrupted? The consortium protocol is to retreat to designated rally points. Patricia shook her head. If comms go down, use your judgment. Adapt to the situation. That's what humans do best, and now it's what you can do too. The battle for Ilara Prime began exactly as predicted. The Void Reavers arrived in overwhelming numbers, their dark ships swarming toward the colony. The defenders launched their attack using Patricia's tactics, striking from multiple directions in small, agile teams. For the first few hours, the plan worked perfectly. The Reaver swarm broke into smaller groups, trying to counter the unexpected attack pattern. Daniel's targeting systems allowed the alien soldiers to identify threats faster than ever before. Then disaster struck. The Reavers deployed a new weapon, an energy pulse that disrupted communications and shields throughout the battlefield. Several teams were cut off, including Patricia's own squad. On a traditional consortium battlefield, this would have led to retreat and defeat. But Patricia's trainees had learned human adaptability. Without communications, the isolated teams improvised. Using hand signals and prearranged fallback plans, they continued fighting. When their standard weapons were damaged, they used the environment itself as weapons, something no consortium soldier would have considered before human training. Patricia's team found themselves pinned down near a power station. With their weapons failing, she made a decision that would later become legendary in consortium military academies. We're going to overload the station's power core, she told her mixed human-alien team. We'll use the explosion to take out the Reaver command node. Her alien second-in-command, Drav, stared at her. That's too dangerous. We might not escape the blast radius. Patricia nodded grimly. Sometimes winning means taking risks. This is the human way. To her surprise, Drav nodded back. Then let us do this the human way. The resulting explosion destroyed the Reaver command node and turned the tide of battle. When communications were restored, the scattered defense teams rallied and drove the Reavers from the system. In the aftermath, Fleet Commander Zix Tull found Patricia in the medical bay, being treated for minor injuries. Your tactics saved Ilara Prime, he said. The Consortium Defense Council is calling it the human factor, this ability to improvise, to continue fighting despite overwhelming odds. Patricia smiled tiredly. It's not magic. It's just what happens when a species evolves, on a world that constantly tries to kill them. Perhaps, Zix Tull replied thoughtfully, but it may be exactly what the galaxy needs right now. As Patricia rested, news of the victory spread throughout consortium space. The scary warriors from Earth had not only shared their combat knowledge, They had inspired a new way of thinking about survival itself. 10 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Consortium. The initial fear and suspicion that had greeted humans had transformed into respect and even admiration. The Void Reaver threat had been pushed back from Consortium, space, thanks largely to human military strategy and the new hybrid fighting techniques that now defined Consortium defense forces. General William Lawson stood at the window of his office on Harmony Station, the massive space platform that served as the headquarters for joint human-alien operations. At 62, he had never expected to end his military career among the stars, representing humanity on the Consortium Defense Council. "General, they're ready for you in the council chamber," said his aide, a young lieutenant named Ryan Cooper. William nodded and straightened his uniform. Today marked a milestone in human-alien relations. After a decade of proving themselves as allies, Earth was being offered full membership in the Galactic Consortium. Elizabeth Harris waited for him outside the council chamber. As Earth's chief diplomat, the 50-year-old former ambassador had spent years negotiating the terms of humanity's inclusion in the galactic community. Her silver-streaked dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her eyes showed both excitement and caution. "Ready for this?" she asked William. "As ready as anyone can be to change the course of human history," he replied with a small smile. The council chamber was a vast, circular room with seats for representatives of all 27 consortium species, plus the newly added human delegation. At the center stood Supreme Counselor Kay Thorne, a tall being with crystalline features that sparkled under the chamber's lights. "Welcome, representatives of Earth." Kay Thorne's melodious voice filled the chamber. "Today we gather to formalize the inclusion of humanity as the 28th member species of the Galactic Consortium." William took his place at the designated podium, while Elizabeth and the rest of the human delegation sat nearby. Across the chamber, he spotted Admiral Zarvex, a high-ranking naval commander who had once been among the strongest opponents of human inclusion. Now, after years of fighting alongside humans against the Void Reavers, he had become one of their strongest advocates. 10 years ago, William began, our species met for the first time. We were strangers, evolved under different suns and shaped by different challenges. You found us strange and frightening. We found you bewildering and cautious. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The consortium initially classified humans as a dangerous warrior species. William continued, and you weren't wrong. Humanity evolved on a world that demanded strength, adaptability, and yes, the capacity for violence. He paused, looking around the chamber at the varied alien faces. But what you've learned since then, what we've all learned, is that being warriors doesn't make us conquerors. The same evolutionary pressures that made humans tough also taught us to protect our communities, to stand against threats, and to value the peace that comes after conflict. Elizabeth stepped forward next, taking her place at the podium. The agreement we bring before you today recognizes humanity's unique role in the consortium, she said. We don't ask you to become like us, nor will we try to become like you. Instead, we offer a partnership where each species contributes its evolutionary gifts. The formal ceremony continued for several hours. Documents were signed, speeches were given, and promises were made. By the end, Earth had officially joined the Galactic Consortium, with special recognition as defenders and protectors of galactic peace. At the reception afterward, William found himself speaking with Admiral Zarvex, who now commanded the joint fleet that patrolled consortium borders. I once feared what humans would do to our peaceful society, Zarvex admitted, his forearms making a gesture of reflection. I imagined you spreading violence throughout the stars. William nodded. A reasonable fear given how we must have seemed to you. What I failed to understand, Zarvex continued, was that the same traits that make humans formidable warriors also make you determined protectors. You don't seek conflict, but you don't shy from it when others are threatened. Across the room, Elizabeth was deep in conversation with Supreme Counselor Cathorn, finalizing details of humanity's new role. Earth would train defense forces, design security systems, and help maintain peace throughout consortium space. In return, Humans would gain access to alien technology, scientific knowledge, and new worlds to explore. The Void Reavers have retreated beyond the Outer Rim, Kay Thorne was saying, but our scouts report other potential threats in that region. The galaxy needs humanity's protective instincts now more than ever. Elizabeth nodded thoughtfully. We're ready to help, but I hope you understand that our goal isn't to militarize the consortium. Humans know the cost of war better than most. That's precisely why we trust you with this responsibility, Cawthorne replied. You understand both the necessity of strength and the value of restraint. Later that evening, the human delegation gathered on an observation deck overlooking the vast spread of stars. Earth was not visible from this distance, but they could see the spiral arm of the Milky Way where their home planet resided. 10 years ago, we were quarantined as too dangerous. For the galactic community, William mused. Now we're its designated guardians. Elizabeth smiled. It turns out the galaxy needed a species that evolved to survive against the odds. A species that doesn't give up, that adapts, that fights for what matters. Ryan Cooper, who had been quiet most of the day, spoke up. My grandfather used to say that humans are too stubborn to know when we're beaten. I guess that's a good thing after all. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Elizabeth checked her communicator and looked up with serious eyes. The consortium has detected unusual activity beyond the Perseus Gap. They're asking for human tactical advisors to join the investigation team. William nodded. Let them know we'll be ready. That's our job now. As the others turned to go, Elizabeth lingered a moment longer, looking out at the stars. Thousands of worlds with billions of beings now relied on humanity for protection. The species that had evolved as frightening warriors on a dangerous planet had found its purpose among the stars. She thought about how far they had come. From being feared as the galaxy's scariest warrior species to being valued as its most dedicated protectors. It was a responsibility humanity would carry with pride. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been misunderstandings, cultural clashes, and moments of doubt on both sides. But through it all, the very traits that had initially frightened the consortium, human resilience, adaptability, and protective instincts, had proven to be exactly what the galaxy needed. Elizabeth turned away from the viewport and followed her colleagues. There was work to be done. The scary warriors from Earth had a galaxy to protect,